Jean, 6:02. Joni or Shelley, then Joni to adjourn closed session at 6:45. Got it? No, Lisa. All right, I'm going to make a motion to call this meeting to order. Or not make a motion, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Bangor School Board. Tonight is our reorganization meeting, so I'll start tonight off for us. Roll call, we have everybody but Lisa. Test to publication.
I saw it.
Thank you, Joni. Approval of agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Take that to a vote. Sorry. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Those opposed? I am really ready to give this back to somebody. All right. We're going to, first of all, open up by asking for nominations for the president. Looking for anyone to nominate someone to be president of the school board.
I nominate Julie Myers as president.
We have a nomination for Julie Myers. Do we have any other nominations? Do we have any other nominations? Do we have any other nominations? We have a motion made, or a nomination for Julie Myers. Would someone like to make a motion for to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Julie Myers as president?
I'll move to close and cast a unanimous ballot for Julie as president.
They have a first.
Second.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Julie, welcome back.
Thank you. All right. Nominations for vice president. I nominate Shelley Piskey for vice president. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Now I ask for a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous vote for Shelley Piskey for vice president.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Kelly for Shelley Piskey for vice president. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I guess that was unanimous. I don't need to do that. All right, nominations for treasurer.
I'll make a motion to nominate Joni for treasurer.
Second.
There's been a nomination for Joni Wilcox for treasurer. Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? I ask for a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous vote for Joni Wilcox for treasurer.
So moved.
Tina.
Tina?
Yep.
Kelly made the motion to close nominations and cast unanimous ballot for Tina for treasurer. Seconded. For Joni Wilcox for treasurer. Tina seconded the motion. Motion carried. Clerk.
I'd like to make a motion, I'd like to make a nomination for Tina Matheson as clerk.
There's been a nomination for Tina Matheson for clerk. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? Any other nominations? I ask for a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Tina Matheson for clerk.
I make a motion to close nominations and cast a unanimous ballot for Tina Matheson.
Second.
Is that Joni?
Yep.
Shelley Piskey made the motion to close nominations and cast unanimous ballot for Tina Matheson for clerk. Joni seconded the motion. Motion carried. Thank you, everyone. All right. District mission, vision, and values, and I will read those tonight. Mission, Bangor Pride, a small school building big futures. Vision, an innovative small school creating excellence through personalized learning and relationships for all. Values, student-centered, safety, opportunities for all, small class sizes, physically sustainable, foster community, continuous improvement, professionalism. Board of Education collective commitments. As a member of the Bangor School Board, I will be an active listener who is open-minded, respectful, and inquisitive. Together with one collective voice, we are committed to forward thinking while strategically prioritizing for our students, staff, and community now and into the future. All right, public comment? None? Okay. So we're moving on to approval of the minutes, April 10th, closed session and regular meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes of the April 10th closed session and regular meeting minutes.
Second.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Kelly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. April 15th special meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for the April 15th special meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Tina. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Student report.
Hello. I had 2 students lined up a week ago, and then one of them had another commitment tonight, and another one went home sick third hour today. So I will update you on some of the events at the middle high school. As you know, busy time of the year. Last night we had our middle school concert, which was great. It was nice to see some of you there as well. I'm really impressed with our 6th grade band from the beginning of the year. If you saw that concert till now, I mean, they have come a long way. Sounded really good. Both band and choir did. So appreciative to our music department for that. Next week, believe it or not, we have our finals for our seniors. Hard to believe it's their last week. Their last day of school is next Thursday. So we have that coming up. Exciting time for them. We have our scholarship and awards night right here next Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. Great event, giving out thousands and thousands of dollars to our students from so many generous donors. It's awesome. And our National Honor Society inductees will be our new inductees that night as well. The next couple days, Ms. Schultz will be giving AP tests, as well as next week for our students that are taking AP classes. We have 21 in our high school English AP class, and then we had a couple other high school AP classes kids were taking. Students are finishing up their finals that are going to UWL this week. Western did finish up already. So we have our kids that are going there, which is pretty awesome. On Monday, we have our academic assembly recognizing our students who are letter winners and GPA of 3.5 and above. So that's always fun. And then our staff designs an activity. Pretty neat thing that the kids look forward to, and they always ask us, are we going to do the activity again? One year it was we all did a skit together as a staff to certain music and things, and I'm letting some of our younger staff take over this year and design that, so I'll be impressed as well when we get to see that. We did carpool karaoke one year. I don't know if anybody saw that, but Dave Lane was in on that when we were in the red van. So stay tuned for this year's. We do have our regular finals coming up in 2 weeks. The last week of school, the 22nd or the 21st and 22nd. For our high schoolers as well, we're hosting sectional track on the 23rd. So we'll get out at 11:08 from here, and I believe we're starting out there at noon or 12:30 out on the track. So that'll be a busy day. We've done it before. Usually we get done by about 11 o'clock. Josh, how many schools are coming this year? 47 schools will be here that night. Not full teams, but so it's a great event for our community. It's nice to see some of our things getting finished, so that'll be nice when teams are here. Kind of had a dry run last week when we ran our meet here where we had 20 teams. So that went well. I thought a lot of the coaches came up to get medals in the press box and said what a great job. It was very well run. And I want to give our track coaches, Dan Rampitzreiter, and our track coaches credit because they had it well organized. I mean, the meet ran really well. And Mike Stang and everybody else who helped put that together. Next Thursday, we have, I don't know if I said it already, but we have our high school music concert. We'll be here. Also next Thursday, our students who went to Western for HSED have their graduation going on that day. We're hosting a middle school track invitational that day. And next Sunday, the 18th or the 19th is our senior banquet, which will be here at 6 p.m. as well. We have our Student of the Year lunch coming up in a week and a half, or a week from Monday. Lots of good things. Graduation practice on the 24th on that Friday, so we'll be out there at 9 o'clock that morning, and then graduation will take place on the 26th at 1:30. We are planning on outside. I really like that outdoor venue. We're increasing the seating out on the field again up to 400 seats from 340 last year. Really, what I was kind of looking at the last few years is how are the sight lines, and we discovered that it's good viewing, so we can do that. Mike Stang and I go through that, hoping for good weather so we can be outside again. Definitely is a lot more conducive. Babies can cry and scream and things, and it doesn't interrupt anything like it does inside. And fortunately, the trains have not had an effect. We've done it out there the last few years. So those are a few of the events. We do have more coming up, plus we have more during the summer, and I just wanted to give you a brief synopsis of that. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing the busyness that's going on, but it's all good stuff. Okay, so Kim Zabel is here from Baird. She's going to give us a budget forecast. David?
Yeah, I think I'll kind of introduce Kim. Kim's new to our district and kind of newer to this position, taking over from Debbie Burnett, who had been here multiple times when we'd looked at our recurring debt, our recurring referendums in the past, or the operational side of things. So, if you recall back to our February meeting, I shared with you that night kind of the vision for as we forecast out and we start to look at those needs long term, we need to do so in a way that we are conservatively planning to make sure that we don't put ourselves in a bad position down the road, and that we're responsible to our community as well. Ultimately, on the last slide that I presented, or the second to last slide that I presented in February, our goal going into this process was to continue to meet our financial needs for the district, to maintain the type of programming, the type of quality education that our kids and community are used to here, and do so in a way that we can continue to show a downward trend in the operational mill rate. And I think that's been kind of our driving factor of how can we capitalize on our debt levy to just keep that stable to declining mill rate that we have seen over the last decade. And our goal is to continue that trend downward and still maintain the financing that we need to run. So we've worked with Kim on this. Angie and I have spent a ton of time looking at the Baird model where we forecast out what the next few years will look like, try to anticipate some of those additional costs that will come up over time. And I think Kim's going to give you a little bit of basics of how we got to that point, and then obviously talk about what our specific forecast will look like for the next few years. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kim, and we'll kind of tag team a little bit as we go.
Great, thank you. Thank you for having me. Like Dave said, I am the new Debbie. So Debbie is now Brian, and now Kim is Debbie, and that's kind of how that worked. But thanks for having us again. I'm part of the School Business Solutions team, which helps with your Baird budget forecast model, and then your bankers, or Brian, would be the person who would help you with your debt, but we're all here to help with all the things. So even if you have questions today that I can't answer, one of these people certainly can, and I'll make sure I get that to you in the next few days, okay? So today we're going to do a quick overview of school finance. School Finance 101 and the numbers here. And your specific financial snapshot, as well as then some budget projections, and to go along with that, some referendum options, okay? So it's important to know that, is this okay? You were exactly on time that you said you were. I'm impressed. All right, there you go. It is like I'm a weather woman here. But we have the picture on the side to remind you that this financial forecast that we're going to look at is easier to predict the sooner we get, and harder to predict the further out we get, right? So in the state of Wisconsin, the biennial budget, which drives the bulk of our revenue, is a 2-year budget cycle, and we are currently in the 2nd year of that biennium, right? So a year ago, Debbie might have been here saying, well, was she here about a year ago? No, maybe if she was here a year ago, she would have been saying, we don't know what this year is going to look like. And as a reminder, we typically don't know until summer of that current year of what the current year is going to look like. And so things change really quickly, and you'll see the forecast. We have a pretty good idea of what next year is going to look like, right? But as we go out into year 2, 3, 4, 5, that gets less and less solid because of the biennial budget in part, but also because our budget is driven by other unknown factors like students and inflation and all of those other sorts of things as well. So it's important to note today that what you see, those numbers will change. I can almost guarantee that the number on the paper today will not be the number on the paper in 5 years from now. But we're trying our best to do those assumptions as best of our ability, okay? So as a little primer for Bangor in numbers, I just want to go around your screen because this is kind of how we look at it from a financial snapshot. So you are home to about 650 students, most importantly. 622 is your FTE, and we'll go over what that number means. Your annual budget hovers around $10 million. 8 of that 10 million, just about, is driven through your revenue limit authority equation. 67%, or about 2/3 of that revenue limit authority, is state aid, and the other third is funded through your tax levy, okay? Your school mill rate then is $9.52 for a total levy between that revenue limit authority and your debt of $4.3 million this year. You have a fund balance at about 16%. Okay, that was end of year June 30th, 2023. And your open enrollment is a little bit more in than out when we look at open enrollment tuition. Okay. All right, so we're going to mainly talk about that second number that I talked about, the $8 million out of the $10 million. And in the state of Wisconsin, the bulk of school district revenue is driven through this one main formula. The formula is district membership times a per pupil amount plus any exemptions, which included in that is your non-recurring referendum exemption. That equals your revenue limit authority, okay? So here, this is what that looks like. Your resident membership, or your FTE, is 622 students. Your dollars per pupil is 11,000. So we take 622 times 11,000. We add 1,027,000, which is the bulk of that is your non-recurring referendum. Okay? And then you have other ongoing, recurring, smaller exemptions to get a total revenue limit authority of 7.9 million. Okay? We take that revenue limit authority then, we subtract out state equalization aid, and we get the amount you're allowed to tax your taxpayers. The most important part of this piece of the formula is that you understand that when the state says that they're giving more money for equalization aid, it doesn't mean that you're getting more revenue, okay? Most of the time, most likely. What's happening is when the bubble in the middle gets bigger, the bubble at the end, the taxes, get smaller, okay? Remember, the only thing that can make the first bubble bigger, that revenue limit authority, is a change to one of these numbers, either your student count, your per pupil dollar amount, which can also be changed through the state biennium budget, or your referendum exemption, right? So that's how you make that number bigger. What the state does with equalization aid then drives how much you get to tax, okay, or have to tax, however you want to put that. Okay, so you had 2.6 million in your allowable revenue, your allowable levy, excuse me. You under levied this year by 150,000, so you actually levied 2.5 million. When we add that then to your referendum approved debt for your facility, your capital approved debt, we get the 4.3 million. Okay, so that's your tax levy. We divide that 4.3 by all the people who live in your district, multiply it by 1,000, and we get your mill rate of $9.52. Okay? Questions on this piece? Okay. So we talked about that formula, which FTE, or the student count, is one of the main drivers of that 80% of your revenue, right? So how do you get to that 622 students? Well, I have to say this is exciting to me because this is one of the very few school districts that I've presented at this year who has increasing enrollment. And I came from an increasing enrollment school district, so that was the way I operated too, but so many in the state are decreasing, right? And you guys have increasing enrollment, which is it's just nice to see like that there's increasing enrollment, you know, people want to come here, people want to be here. Not that people don't want to be elsewhere, but it was just a nice little bright, like, oh, look at that, increasing enrollment. So whatever you're doing, keep doing it. But that 622, you're probably like, well, there's 650 students in our school. Why is that number only 622? So the way we get to that number is we take the head count. So we take all the noses on the third Friday of September that are in our buildings. We take out of that number anyone who's here through the open enrollment program, okay? Then we add back in any residents who are not here but are our residents attending other school districts elsewhere in the state. That gives us our resident student count. So the students in our district who are resident students who are attending public school, whether it's this public school or a public school elsewhere. We multiply that by a proration, so your 4K is 0.5 or 0.6, and then that's what your resident membership FTE is. Now to do that revenue limit authority equation, we do one more step and we average that by 3 years. But that's the bulk of the equation, okay? Now the next piece in that formula is the per pupil amount. We take the 622 times a set per pupil amount. The interesting part of that piece is that it's not all the same for all the school districts in the state of Wisconsin. Not everyone gets the same per pupil amount. Back 20, 30 years ago, revenue limits were imposed and we were all frozen, right, where we were at in the formula. And since then, we've gotten incremental changes to that per pupil amount, but it's never kind of come all together, right? So since then, Bangor has seen incremental changes in this last year. They increased the low revenue ceiling, which is actually a floor. From $10,000, so the lowest a school district could get as a per pupil amount was $10,000. They increased that last year in the biennium budget to be $11,000. So that helped you out a lot, right? You talked about that? Yep, okay. Everyone who was above 11,000 got $325 per pupil. Next year, you'll get an additional $325 per pupil. Okay, so this is kind of your history. The special ed, the other biennium budget changes were special ed slightly increased, but nothing that significant. And then there was an increase in state equalization aid. And again, that was primarily just offsetting taxes. Okay? If we look at the history of that per pupil amount, the reason that a lot of school districts are in the state that they're in, or you hear a lot about school districts needing to go to operational referendum, is in part because those per pupil amount increases that we've gotten over the past 20 or 30 years haven't kept up with inflation, right? So we have pressures, salary and benefit pressures, utility pressures, transportation pressures, costs that keep going up and up and up. But our revenue hasn't gone up to that same extent. On the bottom in the green and the orange, you can see the inflation, which is in green, the inflation index, and what we would have gotten if our per pupil amounts would have continued to be tied to inflation like they were in the early 90s. The actual increase is in orange. You can see in 22, 23, that's not a mistake. We didn't get an actual increase in per pupil amounts at all. It was just frozen, right? And then this 2024 is that 325. If we added all those numbers up and made that a cumulative difference, post-Act 10, we took post-Act 10 numbers because there were some changes that allows us to save money in Act 10. So we took post-Act 10 numbers and we added that up, and that's $2,302 difference between the amount that you get and the amount that you would have gotten if that per pupil amount was indexed to inflation since 2013. Okay? That's a lot. When you're talking about $11,000 per student is your formula, $2,300 would be a big increase, right? So you could do a lot of different things with that. So that is why, in part, a lot of school districts are facing the question of, can we add to that per pupil amount through an operating referendum, because we need to get closer to what our inflationary adjustment has accumulated to be, okay? So we put it all together, students times our per pupil amount. We can vote to add a recurring or non-recurring referendum. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. And we can vote to add our referendum facility debt as well, and that's in Fund 39. You'll see that as a chunk there. And we put that together, and here's your school levy composition over the past few years, okay? So the largest portion, right, is of your revenue limit. And then you'll see in that 22 to 23, you stepped up and added some debt in Fund 39, okay? And then I think it was between 21 and 22 is the 3.1 to 3.4. That's when your non-recurring went from 800,000 to 900,000, right? So in part, it's due to that too. So a lot of different factors in there, but that's your composition. You could also have the ability to tax for Fund 80, which you're not doing right there. Okay? Your mill rate is going down, right? And so you might ask, well, if our levy is going up, how is our mill rate going down? Well, remember that we divide our total levy by our property values, and we all probably know that our property values have gone up a lot in the past couple of years. And so if our property values are going up at a higher rate than our levy is, then our mill rate will go down slightly. So you need to pay attention as a board. It's advised to pay attention to both mill rate and your tax levy. What is your total levy doing? Is it going up? Is it going down? Is it staying the same? Because the same people, most likely, plus or minus a few new houses, right? The same people who are paying the tax bill in 2023 have to split and pay that tax bill in 2024, right? So maybe you'll add a couple houses, but they're surely not going to, that couple's not going to cover your $500,000 increase. So pay attention to that, as well as your mill rate. Over time, mill rate is a great tool for longitudinal understanding of what your taxes have done over the course of a longer period of time. It's also important to pay attention to your mill rate in comparison to other school districts as well. Okay. So we take 80% of that as your revenue limit authority. We take that revenue, we add it to the other 20%, and then we get our expenditure budget. Here's the history of your revenue and expenditures. It says projection. I apologize. It's really your budget. In the past, 18-19 through this year, 23-24, and then 1 year of projection that last year with that last $900,000 non-recurring year on it, okay? So you have a balanced budget this year. And historically, you've brought to the board a balanced budget and then ended up a little bit better, right? Which is great. If we break that revenue further down, we talked about the property tax. You'll see how it breaks down into the other sources of aid. You have per pupil categorical aid, so that is $742 per pupil. You have open enrollment in there. It's kind of hard to see, sorry, but if you have specific questions about other revenues that you get, let me know. One of the big pieces that we point out here is, of course, ESSER, right? So our ESSER money has come in the past couple of years, and we're going to be really happy to be done with that whole process at the end of this year. But that big gray chunk in 23-24 is largely ESSER revenue. Okay, that will drop off then next year. If we look at the expense side of your budget, you can see how your budget is made up. And we are a people organization, right? 70 to 80% of school district budgets are made up of salaries and benefits. So you'll see that as the bottom chunk there, okay? Then we have a transfer to Fund 27. So this is your Fund 10 makeup. As a reminder that Fund 27 is a fund that we account for all the additional costs of the special education services for all of those special education pupils. And we do get revenue in Fund 27, federal revenue, state revenue, but we don't get enough to offset all of the costs of special ed. So at the end of the year, we have to take a transfer from Fund 10, from our general fund, our regular education fund, and move it into Fund 27 to cover the additional costs of special education. So one of the things that you'll hear school districts advocating for is increased state special education aid. And that means that in that Fund 27, they're requesting more revenue so that the Fund 10 transfer is less. Okay, so there's less of a burden on the regular education budget. Okay, so that's a large chunk of your budget as well. And then you have non-capital objects, capital objects, that's supplies, and then equipment and things like that, okay? Questions about that? Okay, if we look to the future then, this projection, and we're gonna go into more projections in just a second, this projection shows this year a balanced budget, and then next year a slight surplus, but then this projection removes that non-recurring referendum, right? Because it's not guaranteed, it has to be voted on. So as you can see, your revenues, your expenditures outpace your revenues, and so you would lead to a deficit budget in those years if you did not have that additional revenue, okay? Okay, so what options does a school district have when a school district has an expenditure budget that exceeds their revenue budget? You can choose to do a operating referendum. So these are the three types of referendums. The one on the way left is debt, and that's not the one I'm here to talk to you about today, but that is one that you have done. That's your facility debt, right? That doesn't help your operating, but that helps your additional facility work. The two on the right are your operational referendums, and you can have either a non-recurring operational referendum or a recurring operational referendum. You're currently in the middle of a non-recurring operational referendum, okay? A non-recurring is set for a certain amount of money for a certain amount of years, right? And you can word it a few different ways in how you word your ballot question. But essentially, you're saying for this long, we're asking for this operating referendum. You can have the same amount every year. You can step up your amount every year. You have options. You can have 1 year. You could have, I think there's a school district with 20 years, but there's only really one. Typically, it's 3 to 5 years that we have a non-recurring referendum, that we see that. On the flip side, you can have a recurring operating referendum. Now, both of these go into that revenue limit authority equation and increase that revenue limit bubble to make your revenue bigger. Non-recurring, then you have to go back to the voter after that number of years and ask for it to be renewed. Recurring is put into that formula, and it actually gets put into that per pupil amount in the second year so that it just stays in your formula forever thereafter. Okay, so there's no set end date. And the levy is added to your base, okay? You can choose to have a single amount, or you can choose to step it up over the course of years, however you would do that. So there's options there. If you have ideas on how you want to see scenarios, that's what the Baird model is for. Dave and Angie and I worked on some that we'll show you, but there's definitely options within all of these different pieces to kind of figure out what is best for your community. Okay. Looking at it graphically, I kind of like this way of looking at it too. Non-recurring is on the left. That adds to that revenue limit authority for the amount of years that you get approved. And then after that, it drops off, and you'd have to then ask again, which you've been doing. You're familiar with that, right? Recurring adds to it in the first year, and then because it becomes part of your base, it just stays that high then for every year thereafter, okay? Questions about non-recurring versus recurring? I know you guys are familiar with non-recurring, but are there any questions you've come up with about recurring? Okay. This is your history. So, you've passed multiple non-recurring. You're in a cycle of a 3-year non-recurring. You're currently at $900,000 per year for 3 years. You're in the middle year of that. You have 1 more year left to go. And then you'll either have that drop off, or you'll have a vote to keep that or increase that. Okay, and then in there also is your debt issuance of your facility project. That's that top one. But this is also like really of positive light to see how much to see that your community has supported you in the past couple of years. We also put the ones that don't pass on there, and I had to double check that because you guys have passed all of your referendums, which is again just so great to see. So. It was fun I had to do a double take. It's important to note that $900,000 of your revenue is, when your total revenue budget is $10 million, $900,000 is a big chunk of change, right? And so we want to make sure you know that you're not alone, right? But also recognize that it is a large piece of your revenue limit authority, and if you do not get that vote for approval, I'm going to knock on wood. The next time around, you'd have a big budgetary gap to make up. But you are not alone, and referendums are becoming very much the discussion of how we talk about school finance with communities around the state. Over 100, and this number will probably increase here by the end of 2024. but over 100 school districts in the state have at least 10% of their revenue limit supplemented by non-recurring operating referendums. So again, you're not alone. This is the way that a lot of school districts are operating right now. It doesn't mean that you have fiscal responsibility or anything like that. It means that this is the way you've started to operate your school, and that is what other districts have had to do in this funding formula as well. Okay. So when we talk about you are in the second year of your current non-recurring referendum and you need to go out again, you have the option of going to a vote in the fall of 2024 to have new funds come online in 25-26, right? And maybe you want to talk a little bit about what your thoughts are on maybe when you would go and how you would go.
I think what we have talked about as a board multiple times is that is the timeline that makes the most sense for our district in keeping in the rotation. As you guys know, you got ahead of things before you had a change in superintendent, so it's been a longer period of time between referendums than typically because you guys got kind of ahead so that the new superintendent, myself coming in, would not have to worry about that immediately in their first year. So when we look at it, we're kind of back on a regular timeline that November makes the most sense for us. If by chance it wasn't approved, we would then have the ability to come back in the following April and maybe look at a different amount or a different structure or a different type of messaging or something at that point in time. I think the district has always positioned themselves for that. And I think the other thing, when you look at the longevity, the amount of time that our district has been supported by a referendum, the support that the community has had, we don't take that for granted, but we have not, the district has historically not lavishly, gone out and asked for more than they needed. This year we had authority to levy more than what we levied. I think that's an important distinction for our community to understand too, that when they when they approve that operational referendum, it's giving us that authority. It is not setting our budget for the next 3 years. We still do that at the October annual meeting, where we lock in what that actual mill rate would be for the year. Having that authority continues to position our district, again, as I started, with the ability to maintain the outstanding programming and opportunities that we currently provide for our kids. So again, I think that November timeline is what we've talked about and what makes most sense for us.
So that would mean, if we're looking at the 11/5/2024 date, then by the end of August, you would adopt your resolution to go to referendum in November of 24. Okay. So we're often asked, when is it best for us to go, or when are we most likely to get a positive result or a yes vote on a referendum? So I wanted to throw up here for you the referendum statistics, the passage statistics. For a non-recurring or even a recurring referendum, generally we see when more people turn out, we have a better turnout for referendum. So the most people generally turn out in November, right, to vote for presidential or gubernatorial elections. And that's when we see the highest yes vote for across the board. So the special election is no longer an option, but you're looking at November, and it will be a presidential election that November. So you do have, at least as far as history is concerned, a higher likelihood of passing. As you go through the next couple of months, we have lots of different statistics on if you're trying to answer your question of recurring, non-recurring, that we've broken it down 800 different ways. So as you go, know that we have the answers to those questions too. If you have questions that come up, we have that data for you too. Okay, so that's kind of the bulk of teeing it up for talking about an operational referendum, right? So this is an output of the Baird model, and it is kind of small. I think I can read it. I'm going to reference my sheet so that I can make sure I'm telling you the right numbers. But like Dave said, we started with his goals in mind, which were great. And I just, again, have to commend the forethought and the insight that's happening here. It's just wonderful to see. But when we go through the Baird model, we set a number of assumptions, right? So because the largest piece of our revenue is based on that FTE and that per pupil amount, those are the top two lines that you see. So we assume, for the purpose of this forecast, that your FTE is continuing to increase, okay? Slightly. We also assume that you'll continue to get $325 per pupil in the next bienniums. Now, the reason we assume that is because currently in the state law, it says that you'll get $325 per pupil additional every year thereafter. Now, we know that that is very likely to change in the next biennium budget, so that will be a major assumption that you'll want to continue to monitor and factor in, right? And then there'll be another biennium budget even in this forecast as well. So that's why I talk about that weather forecast, right? We have a pretty solid understanding of what's going to happen next year, barring the enrollment. But even now, kindergartners are registering, and we have a better idea of that. But as we go out, it's a little bit foggier. Then we did put in here 3% equalized valuation growth. And again, that doesn't affect your revenue in Fund 10, but it does affect your resulting mill rate on the bottom. So we want to make sure we did put in conservative valuation growth into this model. There are salary and benefit increases factored into this as well as other increases, utility increases. We talked about health insurance. We talked about other factors that you're going to need to, play into your budget going forward. So Dave and Angie have gone through and line item that to make sure that those increases are included in those expenditures as well. Again, inflation changes CPI, changes what we choose to do with salaries, and then also changes how our benefits come in as well. So that can change, but a forecast of 3 to 4% is in there. And that results in the revenues and expenditures you see, which result in the deficit that you see, okay? Your fund balance, as I said at the beginning, currently at the end of last year was sitting at 16%. If you don't contribute to fund balance this year, as a percent of your Fund 10 expenditures, your fund balance will end at 14% this year. And then next year, if you do contribute that as it looks, it'll be at 17. So you're hovering right around there, okay? Now, the next line is the line that we're talking about, and that's the non-recurring referendum. So you're currently in the middle of that non-recurring referendum, and that's that $900,000 that you see, okay? Below that is the debt levy, because the debt levy gets added to your operational levy to get your total tax levy and your resulting mill rate, okay? As we go through years 2 through 5, you can see that non-recurring referendum drops off because it's a non-recurring referendum and it's not in there forever. And that results in a deficit then budget for those years. Now, you could sustain that theoretically for a year because you have the fund balance to do that. But when you look at that fund balance in years 4 and 5, or even in that third year, you wouldn't want to sustain that, right? So while this is a projection, this would never actually happen because we would cut expenditures to balance the budget or go out again for a different number, as he was talking about. So it's important to note that as well, okay?
So if we started with 622 FTE, how come your numbers are lower?
That's this September. The 622 is that 3-year average, but great question.
Okay.
And we will,
It was a test.
and we will see. I mean, when we look at the numbers, and we've talked about this, we'll see a declining enrollment next year on that 3-year average, because 2 years back it was a larger number that's falling off, and then it looks like it will trend right back up according to everything we see. I think one of the other things, if you look at the referendum debt levy, 1.7 this year, 1.8 next year. If you remember, we structured some of that debt that when we had that ability to pay it early so that we're not paying interest on it for a long time. And we also structured it so that we would build in about that almost $200,000 drop when we needed to renew this operational referendum too. So that is all strategic in how we've managed that debt moving forward. We knew that we had the $900,000 in operational support for the 24-25, which is why that number is a little bit higher, because we weren't sure beyond that because we know we need to go back to our community for approval. We built that little bit of drop in there too, which helps us to then, just make sure that we can continue to operate the way that we've become accustomed to. Yeah.
Okay, questions? Again, I just have to say, he could do this whole presentation by himself. He knows your numbers, and he's got it in his head, and I just commend that. All right, so now in the second scenario that we have for you, we've now added in a 4-year non-recurring referendum. And again, we said we can change 3 years, 4 years, 5, we can decide what we want to look at here. But in the pink is where we've added that back into that 25-26 school year. And so then above that in your surplus or deficit, it balances the budget, right? That's a balanced budget to me in all years. So we're not stepping it up to $1 million or anything, leaving it at $900,000, even with the factors of increasing salaries and benefits, still looks sufficient for your budget, okay? That resulting mill rate then is achieving one of the goals that you set out trying to accomplish, which was a stable or slightly declining mill rate over time. Okay, and you can see, so it goes from 952 to 947, 940. So we're slowly trickling that down. Okay. Okay. So remember I talked about we have the option of non-recurring versus recurring, and you've had such a long history of non-recurring after non-recurring after non-recurring. One of the thoughts that even Baird will say is, well, would you ever think about a recurring referendum to just set that in stone and then not have to go back every 3 years? So it's important just to look at it, right? And then see what your community thinks about it. So as you remember, the non-recurring comes on for 3 years and then it falls off. And then a recurring exemption comes on and then it stays on forever. So when we show you the third scenario of the 900,000, know that the first year it's coming on, that's that purple piece of that column. And then it gets baked in to your revenue limit authority equation in years 26 through 27. So you'll notice that your budget is still balanced up on top in those prior years, and that's because it's now in that revenue limit formula equation. It's no longer added as an exemption, okay? So then that would forever go. Now, it's not the exact same number. You're probably like, well, we added 900 here, and we added 900 here. Why isn't that 24 at the end the same? You can see that red 24. Why isn't that the same? It's not the same as the 6, right? Because after the first year, we're adding it into that equation and it's turning into a per pupil amount. So as your per pupil then changes, that number slightly changes. Actually, as if you're in increasing enrollment, it goes up just slightly. If you're in decreasing enrollment, the 900,000 turns slightly down. Okay? So that's why the number is slightly different. Again, the same thing with the mill rate, though, where it's going from 952 to steady or slightly declining over the years. Okay. as you decide what you want to do, or, do you want to go out to, I'm assuming you want to go out to another referendum question, what that looks like. The next steps will be to talk to your bond counsel and talk about how you want to word it. Are you going to use the same wording that you've used in the past with the non-recurring, the same essentially copy paste from the last one, 900,000? Are there things that you need to talk about that it needs to be more or less? Duration, is it 3 years? Is it 4 years? Or type, is it recurring or non-recurring? Those are all questions that you guys get to answer as you go throughout the next couple of months, because then you'll notify your bond counsel and they'll write up your resolution so that it's appropriately worded for your ballot and your resolution come the end of August. Okay? Questions for me?
Is non-recurring still the prevalent option in most school districts?
Yeah, we do see more school districts choosing to do a non-recurring referendum than recurring. Mm-hmm.
So those that do the recurring, are they going back, say, in year 5 or 6 because they didn't project well enough?
Well, I think there's a way that, some seasoned business managers have kind of said, for that reason, well, wait, it's not going to be enough, right? And actually, at the school district that I just came from, just passed a recurring referendum. And kind of the way that you have to talk about that is, we intend for this to be enough for a period of time, but we know that if the state doesn't come through with the budget that we assume or we need, know that we may come back and ask. On the flip side, you can also say, if we don't need it, just like you did this year with the non-recurring, we can continue to under levy and we don't lose that authority, right? Were you going to add something?
Well, I think the add to that is you're dependent on it right now, and every 3 years, you go to the community, you get that support. After 5 years, and you need it more, it's not going to be another $900,000 ask at that point in time. It's maybe $100,000 ask or $150,000 ask at that point in time. And hopefully, if budgets are running as you hope, and enrollment is steady, and all of those types of things, that's 5-10 years out. But it is a possibility, and I think when I've looked at districts, some of them that are 10 years out past a recurring referendum are struggling again, and then you're looking at a $250,000-$300,000 referendum. I'd want to be ahead of that if we did that, so that we weren't waiting till we were way behind, see it coming, and make that a small, manageable amount that the community can support. For a lot of the communities that I'm hearing that are talking about the recurring referendum, the community is like, yes, we support our schools. Just stop asking us every 3 years. Just let's get this done. Just, yes, we've got it. We'll So that is the sentiment in some communities. I know that's not the sentiment in all communities, and I don't know that that's the sentiment here. That's just in some communities that they're just saying, yeah, we've got you. We support what you're doing. Do it. We trust that you're going to under levy when you have the ability to under levy. We're going to give you the authority. Just stop asking us every 3 years to do that. I don't know where we are, but I thought it was very important that we at least have those conversations here. Well, we've got this model in front of us, and Kim to kind of talk that through with us. Those are conversations that you'll have with your constituents and kind of talk about, and those will be the factors that lead into what we end up setting for, set for an amount and a process for November.
What is the history going for looking back on school districts that have done the recurring and now have to levy again? Basically, what is the percentage?
For an additional recurring, you mean, or an additional non-recurring?
Non-recurring, yeah.
Yeah.
So when they done the non-recurring, and now, like say it's 6-7 years down the road, and they find themselves short, where they have to come back and ask, what does that look like percentage-wise for pass-fail? Is it still very supportive, or did, obviously it's messaging that, this isn't going to last forever. A lot of it's got to do with messaging, but is there any bad saying, we thought we were done?
Is there anyone saying we thought we were done?
Do you see an increased failure because people are like, no, you said this was it, and we were never going to have to vote for this again, so that we'll have a community that just won't support anything extra? Is that what you're asking, Shelley?
Yes.
Yeah, and I haven't heard personal stories about that, and I can get you that number. Although it's more difficult to get the recurring because a lot of times the recurring will come on. For example, when a facility comes on, right? So I added a school, and I asked for a recurring referendum of just a small amount for that school. That was not operational. Well, it was operational, but it was for something separate. Or another school district I work with added a recurring referendum for a Spanish teacher, right? So it was a very small amount. So I think there's anecdotally some thoughts to that. But we can try and get you the number for that. That is a good question. As people now kind of know that if this is our history, we kind of can see that the state isn't going to support us at those levels going forward. And so we know that at some point we're going to have to come back. We're going to do our best to provide a balanced budget to work within our means for as long as possible, but know that it may not be the answer forever is kind of the message of the recurring referendum at this point.
But what you just kind of said, though, is you can come back specifically then for what you're looking for and give the community more description of why you're asking for an additional reoccurring ask. Like
Absolutely.
you
You can
specify
add as much or
why,
as little
and then
detail.
depending on the support at that time, it would change too.
And you certainly can, and even in your non-recurring, you can work with your bond counsel to have as much or as little detail. You know, in your survey, you'll say, would you support this additional funds to continue the support of A, B, and C? But yep, you can get as specific as you want. But.
So you showed us the difference at the end in the red, 24 and 6. And within that second year, if it was reoccurring, it went back up. But then you said it went to per pupil. So explain a little bit more to me how that works, because in my head, I thought it was just 900 across the board. We use it like we do now, or we don't. We under levy, and then it changes the mill rate. How is that going to affect how we calculate going forward if it is a reoccurring after that first year?
So I'm going to go all the way back to this guy. Okay. So in this formula, that 7.9 is your total revenue limit authority. Now, that's not your taxes because you get state aid to in part supplement that. But the resident membership times the per pupil amount plus non-recurring exemptions or recurring exemptions. So right now, your non-recurring exemption is the majority of that $1 million, right? If you were to pass a recurring, for the first year, it would go into that 89,000 bucket, that ongoing recurring. Then, the way the formula works, it gets divided by your membership and plugged into that 11,000 after that. So it bumps up your 11,000 over and above 11,000.
Will that affect our state aid?
No, your state aid is after that.
After that, okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so it bumps up your 11,000 to 11,000, 500 or whatever it is for every year thereafter. Now that's your floor instead of 11,000 being your floor. And so then if you would get aid, or maybe you're asking, would that affect the additional $325?
Right.
Yep.
Yes.
Then additionally on top of that, you get $325. It doesn't say now you can't get that.
So if we increase that number, that will not affect what we get back.
Not as far as the per pupil amount additional increase in the
Okay.
revenue limit authority.
So yeah, I understand what you're saying. You're raising that by 900. If your enrollment goes up, then that 900,000 truly isn't 900,000.
It's
then
a little bit more.
It's a little bit more,
Mhm. If your enrollment goes down, it's a little bit less.
right?
Yeah.
Will the taxpayers see that?
They'll see that as a result of the ending formula. Yeah.
And in our mill rate.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if we set a reoccurring, so we may not have to come back for more if our growth keeps continuing, because that 9 could increase. It's a
only
challenge.
a small portion of
You won't notice.
your total. It's less than 10%, right, of your total revenue.
Okay.
I think what it shows in that 4-year projection is if you look at the one of the second to last slides with that recurring. That went from a $24,000 deficit to a $6,700 deficit. But if you look at the top line of that too, we're projecting, right? We're forecasting our enrollment based on what we've seen and what our trends are. You're also seeing an increase across the top there to 629 in that last year. So that now is more directly affecting that. If that stays same, if we stayed absolutely the same in enrollment, that number would probably be much closer to that 24,000 that's on that screen before that. But again, we're trying to project, we're trying to guess based on what we're seeing coming in each year, that if we continue to climb a little bit, that would be what that looked like. So that, I guess that's why there's that almost $20,000 difference there. It's because this line is showing that slow and steady growth.
So barring the whole part about asking the community or not asking the community, is there any disadvantage to the recurring? Formula-wise, or I said, just skip the part about asking the constituents or not asking them. Is there any disadvantage as far as when the equation comes, or our ability to levy for going strictly with recurring? Is there any disadvantage?
So it gets built in. I mean, it's all the things that we talked about,
Yep.
right? And then obviously the pass rate of non-recurring is slightly higher than recurring as well. Depending.
I mean, you were very
when you go.
very detailed. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything.
Yeah, no, and I think it's important to play that out. So if you have another idea, we put it in the model and we look at it, right? And again, like we've said, it's our best assumption of what's going to happen. The state comes in and does something that, who knows? I can't predict that. If I did, I shouldn't be in this spot. But
Yeah, and the only thing that I've heard, in my networks and in our conversations, I know you have not run this in a model, but this year that bottom number was 10,000 and it moved to 11,000. If you were in a district that was already, had moved that up, you didn't go from that number up 1,000. If you were at 10,500, you went to 11,000 per pupil. So they didn't see that full $1,000 per pupil gain that we saw this year. If it goes to that and ours ends up at 11,500 and in 2 years they say, you know what, we're going to move that bottom number to 12,000, we're really only going to see, 500,000 of that difference. In my mind, it's still the same money and it's still coming from the same people. It just, we had a community that was progressive enough to make sure our district was there first.
right, you still have a balanced budget.
We still have a balanced budget because we plan for it. So I think you could see that as a potential negative because we only got $500 per pupil and the district next door got $1,000 per pupil. Where if you still had the $900,000 on a non-recurring, you'd get that $1,000 per pupil increase, and that's part of what happened this year. That and the ESSER dollars that we were able to under levy because we saw that full amount. We knew we did not need to levy to the full authority to still make our budget, balance. So, I think we have a good track record there. Again, I don't know if that's a negative, but I think it's, perception wise, that could be a factor. I'm correct on that, aren't I? Okay. Yeah, that's not something we have modeled or talked about. It's just been something else that's come up in conversation. So we have to understand that.
And as you saw, that low revenue ceiling increase was historic. That had happened one time in a very long time, right, that it had been that way. But like I said, you don't know what's going to happen. But to the best of our ability, that's the way it would go.
Reoccurring. If you ask for a reoccurring and it goes through, do people come back and ask for, is there a limit on how many reoccurring you can put out there? Do you come back as a reoccurring and then a non-reoccurring? Do you ever change your reoccurring? Can you change it? Once it's passed, can you change that?
We can.
Do you
add
ever?
To it. But
Because you would never go below that, because where you're setting it should be what you're going to go full through.
you would just under levy. Yeah.
Okay. So you would never change it. You would set it knowing that was yours. If you didn't need it, you didn't take it. And then if you had to add on. Okay, that makes more sense to me now that you say that. Okay.
And I think what Kim was saying was an example of adding a Spanish teacher, or, if we were going to add a program, we were going to, we knew that position was going to come on forever. You could look at, where we've approved that $900,000 recurring, and in 4 years, we need to add $80,000 a year recurring forever, but we're now going to have this program that's tied to that money. So it doesn't have to be that money. I think when you first started seeing in the 90s, when you first started seeing,
90s, exactly.
right, when in the 90s, you would have started seeing more of these operational referendums. And the question would have been, do you support this increase? And it's tied to this position, this position, this position, this program, this, and this. And if it doesn't pass, then we lose all those things, because that's what we're going to have to do to balance our budget. If you look at our question over the last 3 or 4 or 5 times that it's been approved here, it's to support, our ongoing programming as it looks right now. Would we look very different, and would we have to cut people and have to cut programs to get $900,000 made up? Absolutely, we would. We would look very different than we do now. But as our questions have been written, they are not tied to one specific program. So that's I guess
Right.
just
and that leaves you with the flexibility, and going back to that, it still leaves you with the flexibility of making those decisions year to year, right? Whether what you're doing with your debt levy, what you're doing with your referendum levy, what you're doing with your total levy, you still have the ability. It doesn't lock you into a certain thing, and then, not being specific allows you to make budgetary decisions year to year and not tie you to specific things either. So you can still have goals in mind, and you can still, make sure that you're hitting all of those goals, but without writing specific language too. So.
I told them to grill you, and they did a good job.
Well, I know there's questions I can't answer, and that they will come up in the next couple of days as you kind of think about it and have more questions. Just write them down, and I will look into that question. I'm pretty sure we don't know the exact number of percent that's come back, or we know the number, but it'd be nuanced. But as you have questions, certainly, ask Dave, and my team will work to answer them. Again, it's been a pleasure to work with you, and pleasure to see how supportive your community is of your schools, and that's so great to see. So, and yeah, good questions. That means you got an engaged board, like another.
For all the right reasons.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Care about our community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
thank you, Kim, for the
Thank you
drive
very
and heading up
Thank you,
and
Kim.
giving the presentation.
Thank you for the information.
All right.
Okay, moving on to the board president's report, selection of diploma presenters. So Lisa is not here, but Lisa does want to be a presenter for our diplomas. We usually do have 2 people. So is anyone else interested?
I've done it the last 2 years, so I think I should pass the baton to somebody.
I can if.
Kelly, if you want to?
Yeah, I
Sure.
can.
All right, Lisa and Kelly. Thank you. Super. All right. Board committee assignments. So as you know, a part of our function as a board is to serve on smaller committees that report back to the board. And this is the time of year where we decide if we want to move or where Jessica would like to be a part of. So
Yeah, I don't have it up there, but
Okay.
it is in your document. Obviously, with Lori leaving the board, she was on the Building and Grounds Committee, and she was on the Goals Committee, and she was the chair of that Goals Committee. The negotiations have always been full board. Building and Grounds, Shelley has been our our committee chair for that. Transportation, Joni has been our committee chair for that. Policy, Joni has also been the chair for that.
Yes.
And the goals, Lori was the chair, so we'd be looking for a chair there. So we don't have to decide this tonight, but it needs to be set, and I will be pulling that policy committee together soon. Is there anybody that has strong feelings on where they'd like to jump before we put Jess a couple places? No? Everybody's good with where? Would you like to join the Building and Grounds Committee and the Goals Committee?
You
Okay.
won't have to be a chair.
Julie, will you move to chair for the goals? That one is pretty
Sure.
easy.
I can be chair for goals.
Okay, so then we'll move, and I think I gave you a sheet for that, didn't you? You got some notes? Okay, so Julie will be the chair, and then we'll all stay put. Awesome, thank you.
And we have chairs. Lori wasn't chair of anything else?
Just the goals. Yep.
Okay, super.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica. And thanks everyone else for all your work that you do with our committees. So we have a CISA annual meeting, and that is June 5th. I am a representative on CISA, but we need to make a motion for somebody to attend that meeting on June 5th at 6:30.
Julie, can you?
I
mean,
can.
You can serve. Then I would make a motion to send Julie Myers as our representative of the school district at the CISA 4 annual meeting.
Second.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Tina. Any other questions about that or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. So, Jessica and I attended the new board member meeting at CISA on April 17th. Mr. Dan Rossmiller, who's the executive director of WASBA, presented. Kind of a long time it got to be, but it was really good. Jessica and I chatted a couple of times. It was good for me too, because you always pick up new things. Dan has a background of an attorney, so he's always thinking about that with WASBA. Jessica, do you have any comments?
He was very thorough. He came with a lot of warnings, but he was very easy to follow along with, and he very carefully chose his words.
Yes.
So it was easy to understand.
Well said. Exactly. Yep. So that was good. It was very helpful. Any questions?
No questions, but officially welcome to the board, Jess.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Jessica, we're happy to have you.
And you can push the button on the right when you talk. Baptism by fire.
And
Here
that's
you go.
mainly so that people online can hear you, because we do have people that are listening to our meeting. But welcome, Jessica.
Okay, thank you then.
We're happy to have you. All right. Committee reports, Policy Review Committee.
Yeah, I did meet with Dave and got through all of the policy, and we've got some updates to do. The end of the year is and has been a little bit hectic with all of the construction and getting ready for everything. So I imagine that will be right after school gets out. I'll meet with you guys, and I want to get that done before the June meeting so that we can get all those changes approved. So just wanted to give a heads up on that.
If you put a invite out there, can you text us? to make
Yes,
sure? Okay.
absolutely. I'll probably just text you to get a consensus on a date.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, district financials, financial documents.
Yeah, I had a couple questions actually come in on, I believe it was the track meets, and good questions on why are we paying other districts and why are other districts paying us. The invites are all paid. We have a rate for our conference teams versus our non-conference teams, and I think the simple economics of that is not every district hosts, and if we didn't have a fee to help cover some of those costs, it would nobody would benefit. Nobody would really want to take that step and move forward. So it's pretty little amounts of numbers going back and forth, and our team does a great job of hosting when we do host. So with no other questions on the financials, I'd look for improvement of the financials.
I'll make a motion to approve the financials as presented, including Fund 21 checks, general account checks, and May 2023 financial report.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Facility projects update.
There's a whole lot written there. We haven't done a tour in a while. Maybe we can get a tour in June so you guys can check things out a little bit. The middle, by the June meeting, the middle of our elementary school will look like a war zone. I am confident in that. It is just amazing the work that they're doing over there while we're still functioning, and I can't hardly imagine what it's going to look like when we get out of there completely. Going really, really well. And Mike and I talk about it. We walk that hallway, that new hallway, like it is just so quiet out there. Even with the construction, it just absorbs the sound, and it's just such a neat place to be in. Our kids are really fortunate to be in that environment. So it's just awesome. And lots going on there. Middle school, high school, we're rolling right along. The weight room is looking outstanding.
Looks really
yeah,
nice.
It looks amazing. It's just awesome, and we can poke our heads in there at the end of the meeting if you want to take a look at that. Flooring's coming in, or flooring's getting laid out tomorrow, and actually stuck down on Monday, Tuesday, and equipment the end of next week, which is just crazy to think about. And we will be. I know our weight training classes are incredibly fired up because they're going to be able to do their max outs at the end of the season in the new weight room. So that's really, really exciting. Activity center, wow. They're digging into that place, and I don't know the two principals have even popped in over there. The brick walls that are coming down, the new block walls that are going up for the bathrooms, all those types of things, underground work. It's just been crazy. I think steel is rolling in next week for the structural part of the back. It's rolling along nicely. So exciting to see those things come to fruition. Lots of pictures there. We'll continue to try to get those on here regularly for you guys to see those. But any questions on construction?
Just a comment, the number of years from when this building was built, the way the brick matched the exterior is just amazing. Never thought it would get that close after this many years, but a lot of comments have been made about that you can't even tell that it wasn't part of the original structure.
Yeah, I've had that conversation with a number of people. That looks amazing. And in the colors of the elementary too, how they tie with the 2008 edition, and we'll cover up all of the 1967 edition. So there'll be two colors there. Just goes together so nice, and those will correspond with the activity center now as well.
And actually, someone asked me about the high school. They said, did you guys save some brick and have it stored somewhere? I was like, no.
About a pallet.
People have said it is. Honestly, somebody asked me that last week. Did you buy a bunch of brick? No. Sorry. But it is true. It's so comparable.
All right. Going to the district action items. Is that all right?
Yes.
All right, district action items. First item up is we have 10 students that have qualified to attend the FCCLA National Conference in Seattle, Washington. This group is hard at work already, working on their fundraising to be able to take this trip. With this trip and any other beyond the state competition, the district basically helps with some transportation. So we'll help get them to the airport and back, and the rest of the trip they'll be covering through their fundraising and through personal, purchases of that group. So the information on that trip is there, and looking for approval of the overnight field trip for the 10 students and their instructor to head to Seattle, Washington from June 28th to the 5th.
I'll make a motion to approve the overnight field trip request for 10 students and district chaperone to attend the FCCLA National Conference and Competition in Seattle, Washington in June 28th through July 5th.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Shelley. Any questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
All right, based on our planning conversations and even projected in the Baird model that you just saw, we have the teacher compensation for 24-25. The proposal would apply all applicable movement for our teachers on the compensation scale, and then increase each cell on the scale by $1,100, making our new starting salary a very competitive in the area, $42,100. So looking for a motion to approve teacher compensation for 24-25.
I'll make a motion to approve the total base wage increase to teacher compensation. That includes appropriate experience movement and increasing base salary to $42,100.
Second.
Motion made by Kelly, seconded by Tina. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Applying a very similar rate and trying to make it nice and easy and keeping our hourly scales easy to follow. We're looking to apply a 75-cent raise to the vast majority of our hourly positions. And there's the proposed rate schedule in here with it's highlighted in blue. So I'm looking for an approval of the proposed hourly rates as presented for the 24-25 school year.
I'll make a motion to approve the proposed hourly rates as presented for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni. Any questions, further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Confidential and administrative adjustments. Motion to approve the pay increases for the confidential staff, including technology coordinator, building and grounds coordinator, bookkeeper, central office administration assistants, school psychologist, principals, district administrator, as presented in closed session tonight.
So moved.
I'll second that.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Shelley. Any questions for the discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Have here the purchase of a new school bus. When I first got the quote, I about fell off my chair. They had told me that it was going to go up, and it definitely has gone up. We've seen that price continue to increase, and with some new federal regulations on emissions, we expect that number to kind of continue to grow over the next few years as well. It's going to be really important for us to get our fleet updated. That's the next couple items here to make sure that we have good, safe buses for kids to ride on a daily basis. My goal is, in the next year or so to be able to get to a point where we replace one single bus a year and we have nothing that's older than 10, maybe 11 years old for our sub. We're still running 13 and 14s, 2013s, 2014s for buses. We need to get some of those out of our fleet and get our fleet more current. So this is an investment for now and into the future of a brand new school bus for a cost that includes the registration and new camera system and all of those types of things of $129,831.50. So looking for a motion on that.
Crazy.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a new 2025 International School Bus from Ascendance Truck Center at a cost of $129,831.50, including license, registration, and new camera system.
Second.
Motion by Shelley, seconded by Kelly. Any questions? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
Similarly, on the safety vein, we have a number of school vans that are active every single day transporting students, sometimes one or two students to different locations throughout the district and sometimes into lacrosse and those types of things. Having dependable transportation that we can count on that's safe to get up on the interstate and go makes a huge difference for us. We have two very much aging vehicles in our fleet. One we had kind of kept last year to keep our custodial staff driving on the local routes. We will continue to do that with one. We will sell another one of them and looking to update with another new minivan. I did price multiple dealerships on this. The same dealership as last year, Sleepy Hollow in Viroqua, has been incredible to work with. I would just say as a testament to them, we had these numbers and I kind of had them in here about 2 weeks ago prior to May 1st. He sent me an email on May 2nd and an additional rebate had gone on and that he took another $750 off. I know that's not huge, but I also know that he probably didn't have to email me and tell me that when I already had a contract in front of me. So I truly appreciate somebody that's looking out for us a little bit that way as well. So looking to make a purchase of a brand new 2024 Chrysler Pacifica from Sleepy Hollow. This will include license registration and 2 extra key fobs. With the number of different people driving the vehicles, having 4 fobs versus 2 makes a huge difference for us. So looking for that approval.
I'm assuming that comes with some kind of warranty, right?
Yep.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of a 2024 Chrysler Pacifica at a cost of $41,963.98.
I'll second that.
Motion by Joni, seconded by Shelley. Any questions or further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Because we had a couple of buses that were immediately flagged on our April 4th inspection, and I will say buses that were not driven every single day at the time. They were some of our older ones, but nonetheless, we had a number of things flagged. I think it's really important that we update the fleet in a way that we don't create multiple buses in the same year, if possible, so that we can continue to get that goal of keeping them updated and replacing one a year. In doing some research on that, I have a couple of different options I've shared with the board. We have bid on buses. Last year we purchased a bus from Viroqua. We've bid on buses from Viroqua again this year. I don't have that end result. If our bids were successful, we would be looking to purchase probably 2 of them from Viroqua. And if they're not successful or we can't purchase those out of end of year funds, then I would be looking to purchase a used bus from a different source. So either way, just kind of looking at what our options are, because I'm waiting to hear back on results, and just making sure where we're running and what year's budget we can take these out of. I'm just looking for the approval to spend up to $160,000 on up to those 2 buses, and I'll keep the board updated on how those purchases play out.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of up to 2 buses pending the bid approval and final year and budget numbers at a cost not to exceed $160,000.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni. Any questions? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. On to personnel.
Keep right on rolling. We had a resignation. Michelle Evenson has worked in our food service program for a number of years, the last 3 years as head cook at the middle school, high school. She had another opportunity that she felt she wanted to pursue, so she is resigning as of end of day on May 23rd, our last day of school. We thank her for her time in the district and would look for approval of her resignation.
Make a motion to accept the resignation of Michelle Evanson as middle school, high school head cook effective May 23rd, 24.
Second.
Oh, I didn't even hear her. Motion made by Kelly, seconded by Tina. Any questions for the discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.
All right, the next hire, as you know, we have had subs in the building all year in the night shift at our elementary school, and left us in a just a challenging position for the year. Patty Knutson has been a long time custodian, has done a number of subbing jobs for us throughout the years. She has other summer type commitments, but during the school year works really well for her. She's done a great job for us. So we were able to just basically lock her in all nights where we have kids in the school, and a couple of nights where we've got staff at school before the first day of school, making sure everything's set and ready to go. So we kind of laid out a calendar that made sense for her and her personal schedule, and I think this is really going to be advantageous for that building to have that consistency throughout next year. So it's actually a partial contract instead of a 100% contract. It's because she's not working summers, but I think this will be great for the district. So looking for approval to approve Patty Knutson as our night custodian.
So we will have coverage for that remaining 34%, or?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of that is summer, and we have hired one student to help us this summer, and we may hire more, and I think that would just be a good solution for us in the future too, for that summer help, for that summer cleaning.
I'll make a motion to approve the hire of Patty Knutson as night custodian at the Bangor Elementary School to work agreed upon school days for the 24-25 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni. Any questions for the discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Last one here, Mr. Johnson, would you like to take it away from here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, go for it.
Sure, this is pretty exciting. Ask the board to approve our 4K hire for next year. Caitlin Schmitz has worked in our district as a student teacher starting in January, and worked with Mrs. Jarvis for a quarter of time. And that guy got to know her and see her work and see her build relationships with our students. And from there, she has an early childhood degree, so she moved right into working with Mrs. Waldenberger. So from there, we've seen her again working with our kids and building relationships with our staff in multiple areas of our building, and being a key. Usually student teachers are a little bit more reserved and quiet during PLC conversations and those types of things, but she's active, she works hard, those types of things. She's prepared, she's reflective, all of those pieces that we're looking for. We had 20 applicants for this job, which I think last year when we hired Sharon Nicolai, I think we had 7. And I will say that we interviewed 7. Which typically shooting for 6, but this group of candidates were so talented that we ended up bringing on 7, and all of them really were outstanding. And the thing that stood out at the end of the day is not only did Caitlin interview well, but we knew a lot about her and how she'd already was working in our atmosphere. So that was really good for our team. You can see who was on our team. Our 2 4K teachers really led that conversation, and really excited to have Caitlin on board. She was excited, and I asked the board to approve that.
This was a 1 year, is that correct? Or did that change?
Yeah, it is. All of our contracts are, 1 year at a time. We had a very candid conversation about that as she accepts the job. So she knows that if enrollment does not continue to support this, that she may not have a job. She also knows that there may be some positions that change in the district within the next couple of years. And there's an opportunity for her to do something else if that enrollment doesn't support it. She's very aware of that and understands that in taking this position.
One thing, if I can add real quick, this is something that's really special about Viterbo students. They can actually substitute teach in the classroom that they're working in. Rephrase that. They can work as a substitute teacher while their cooperating teacher can go cover a classroom that maybe didn't have a teacher for that day. So a couple different times when so let's say Mrs. Jarvis actually she was off doing all kinds of different things because we needed someone, or it worked out that she was able to cover a class, and then Caitlin, without hesitation, was like, "Yep, I'm here, I'm doing it," and that type of confidence. It stood out multiple times. And then, in fact, today, I was trying to catch up to her, talk about a couple of things, and went into Mrs. Waldenberg's room. And here she was in Mrs. Nicolai's room. Sharon was homesick today. And because you had a substitute teacher in her, Caitlin went in to help the other class get through the academic things that they were working on in the classroom. So that is just a piece of the puzzle to what we need is all hands on deck, whatever it takes at whatever time. And she just fit that role really well. So I'm excited to bring her on.
I'll make a motion to approve the hire of Caitlin Schmitz as a 4K teacher for the 2024-25 school year.
Second.
Motion made by Joni, seconded by Kelly. Any other questions? Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, administrative reports. Mr. Chaplin.
Thanks, Julie. So the first thing on there is the ACT administration. Kids have been starting to get their results back. Obviously, we can't report overall scores, probably not till like November, but kids have been getting their individual results back, and so you'll stay tuned to see how they did overall. And then the second item would be the Cardinal Hall of Distinction. We did not have a class last year, so if anyone wants to nominate anyone for this year, the deadline is July 31st, and hopefully pair that with homecoming, even though those dates are few.
Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Chaplin. Mr. Johnson.
Thank you, Julie. Just a summer school update. We're wrapping all of the planning up, which is great. You can see 260 students signed up this year, and last year we had 237. We have a few expanded different offerings this year, which is exciting. We're going to use the new weight facility during the day for about 13 days, which is exciting there. Just a shout out to Terry Kenyon. She has worked so hard to get this. She's got good systems, and every year we reflect on it, and we work together really well. And I just appreciate all the work that she's put into it. I have summer school contracts and things way ahead of what we did last year, and even with getting out of school early this year, it's just one of those things that's what people don't understand is summer school is very, very similar to planning an entire school year. You still have to staff it, you still have to roster it, you still have to line everything up. So it's fewer students, but it's still a lot of work, and I appreciate all the people that are going in, as well as the teachers that signed up to do that. We have more teachers this year, certainly than we did last year, willing to, and that's exciting times. Testing completed, so I think forward went really well. I'm so glad that we waited and went in with the new addition. It was so quiet in there. We were able to close those doors, and it's just 3rd through 5th. Those are the people that are testing. So look forward to that. And then MAP testing is completed as well. PTO Carnival, we had that the other night. Just a really nice turnout, and I don't have any numbers or anything like that I haven't heard anything, but school or PTO always does really well. Did a lot of really fun things this year. They auctioned off throwing out first pitches at 2 baseball games and 2 softball games. They had lunch or tie dyeing with Miss Tauscher. Just a kid and a friend to do tie dye type thing. So that was just the teachers stepping up to have some really neat alternate things that parents could bid on for a few bucks or whatever type of thing. So I think that's always kind of fun. Getting ready to move. So yeah, that's going to be great. I'm looking forward to the 24th being done. So the inside, like David said, it's amazing going into what used to be, a couple of, not even a couple of months, a couple of weeks ago, really, several weeks ago. Katie Huffman, Jamie Lamprecht were teaching in classrooms, and I went in there today, and there's a block dry storage room. The coolers are ready to go in. All the plumbing for the sinks and everything are in. The floor is re-poured. It's like, that being said, with that tight, we've worked really hard to, with the Borton and Charlie and the guys that work there have worked really hard with us and Nexus to work through a lot of the distracting pieces, and the kids have been great and the teachers have been great. And I hope that puts them on our better timeline to be done, in the middle of August. And I'm hoping. I like August 15th. That's kind of a number I'm hoping for. But the moving everybody out, I think teachers are going to have to, close down their rooms like they would normally, but many of them are moving into the hallway of the new addition. Yeah, it's going to be kind of probably as brutal as it sounds. So we'll get it done, and that's a good workforce over there. And then lastly, today we had our 4th, 5th grade spring concert, which was ukuleles and recorders, and then a basketball expedition of some kind. Went really well. The kids just did great, and we had a lot of parents in our building. Lots of parents have come in and seen the new addition. Several comments today just about how beautiful it is, and always positive comments. So pretty exciting. And Paul, Paul and everybody else, Paul Sattergaski does a really nice job with our kids. I think we're going to get more of those kids moving into the upper grade level arts because of what we have going on at the elementary school, and I really appreciate it.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Johnson? All right. Thank you. Mr. Mullenberg.
Thank you, Julie. First, Jessica, welcome to the board. I don't think we're going to be meeting in this room next month. Okay.
Oh.
So
That's right.
on the 28th or 29th, this will start to be torn apart. So we'll have to discuss it at some point.
I'm sure it will be our IMC here. Yes.
Good. Might not use the front doors, but we'll get there. So, a few things on my agenda today. Alexa Hike Camp. I did include something, the letter in there, but she was chosen by the Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection to be on the Wisconsin Agriculture Youth Council, which is pretty neat. There's only a handful of kids from around the state, and it says that they only recognize students who are top performers in that area. So I'm excited to have Alexa on there. She's going to be a great representative, not only for that, but for our school. I mean, she's involved in a lot of things, and she actually was one that was going to be speaking tonight, but she fell ill today. And I think part of it is she does a lot of things. I mean, she's just extremely busy, so she needs some rest. Secondly, I was asked to be on the Viterbo School of Education Advisory Board, so I did accept that. It's highly compensated. You get 2 meals a year, so it's great. No, I look forward to it. Down there just to give advice, or from my perspective, what I see, what we're looking for in teachers, and working with our student teachers here, things that I've seen, and Mike and I talk about. So I'm excited for that. We do meet next Tuesday for the first time. It's only twice a year at night, so that's good. Doesn't interfere. Next, very deserving Amy Olson, our art teacher, nominated by the county libraries for Educator of the Year award. So she did get that award, and she'll be honored at a reception Monday the 13th. After their library meeting, it'll be at the Holman Library around 4, so I plan on attending that, which is great, very well deserved. And she's working on a little bit of a mural in my office that I'll have to show you when that's complete. ACT follow-up, I can't, like I said, we can't say the scores. It's not on there, but we're very pleased, I'll say that. And if you look at the ACT board in the hall, you might see an addition. Lastly, I added to it, it's not on there. We just found out yesterday Sam Crenshaw is now an All-American in the pole vault, high school All-American. He is this is the way Dan Rampertsrider told me today. He is the first athlete from Wisconsin to be an All-American. They just started it last year in pole vault. So nonetheless, you have to vault 16 plus feet to get that. So, and Sam has broken our school record. It's 16.9 he's gone now? Yeah, he's gone over that. But anyway, so Sam is currently a little bit injured, but he should be back in another week or so. But it's pretty awesome that he is an All-American for us. So I'm excited for him as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Mullenberg?
I was just going to comment that Alexa has been getting press, but they keep announcing her by her zip code instead of saying she's a Bangor student. They keep saying
that bothers me as well. It says Mindoro.
Yes. So, I'm like, say where she goes to school.
Yeah, I sent an email back to them, and I put that in there. Please refer to her as a Bangor student.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Brackup.
I'll go quick because you've heard enough from me tonight. Teacher Appreciation Week this week. Thank you to the school board for your support of our students. A couple of the board members, Julie and Lisa, made the rounds on Monday morning and greeted all of our employees and with a thank you card and some donuts. So that was appreciated. Miss Rigel cooked today, so that was amazing for the goodies throughout all the district. We've got lunch for the staff coming in on Friday. So trying to take care of our people that do a great job taking care of our kids on a daily basis. So thank you to our entire district staff. Next week's National Transportation Week will celebrate the drivers a little bit as well. They're safely transporting our students back and forth from school or from home to school every day. So we thank them, the drivers that are taking our students into lacrosse and so forth. Thank you to all of those people. Just a couple of logistical things. May 29th, shortly after school is out, the MDF changeover will take place here. The main distribution frame, I've learned all kinds of things during this construction. That's the main hub that's in the back of the office here that will be updated. So it will take our entire network out for the entire district. So I have communicated to folks that would be a good day to take a vacation day, because you're really not going to be able to do anything computer based, and without the computer, our lives are a little bit different. So at least the folks that are here during the summer. So the district will be closed on that day. Similarly to what we did last school year or last summer, we've talked about this. Our full year staff, our central office staff, secretaries and such, they don't use a lot of their time during the school year, and we've got time to use. They've used to try to do Mondays, Fridays, alternating. It just makes a lot more sense for us to say that the office is closed on Friday. We will always be available for appointment. If somebody has something that we need to meet on Friday, please give us a call, and we'll definitely set up a time. But for the most part, the building worked well last summer, and it will continue to be closed this summer on Fridays as well. So just a little heads up and public service announcement on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions? All right, thank you. So next, removal of items from the consent agenda. Consent agenda items include current openings. There's an early graduation request, and there is some information about that in your packet. Elementary and middle high school building budgets, and also the handbook for both of the buildings. And then our early childhood agreement, which is also written out in your packet what that all entails.
Just a question on the handbooks, the elementary and middle school, high school. Was there anything really that changed? Because I didn't see anything, and I tried to compare, but
Yeah, not really. Just had to add the 4K hire, which will go in there and take care of that. There will be some, the report card language has to get clarified just a little bit, but for the most part, it's the same.
okay.
Yeah, middle high school changed the phone numbers. Last year was approved before all our numbers changed. Changed those, changed some personnel, and then actually are more deletions than additions. A little bit on the vaping put in there because we've seen a little more prevalence in that. So other than that, it was just years, dates.
And we are trying to get ahead on that a little bit. We're gonna make our first attempt at doing registration almost completely online. We'll still be available. We'll still have those days that folks can come in, but the more that we can make accessible electronically to families up front, so they can get through and register anytime, anywhere, is important to us. So, in order to meet all those timelines, we needed to make sure that these were both approved and visible. There will be a couple phone number changes and those types of things, but they will be links to documents, and these guys will update those as they go, and that link will still be available.
And also middle high school, for our assignment notebooks, I have to have them submitted by June 10th. That's why I always get them approved at the May meeting, and it just made sense to drag Mike along with me.
Yeah, this is a June or July approval for me, so yeah, it's all good.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Shelley, seconded by Joni to approve the consent agenda. Any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion made by Tina, seconded by Joni. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you.